Hello, D&Ders, RPGers, Game Masters, and such. Going to talk about D&D dice and granularity. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I didn't actually know what it was, and I'm pretty smart sometimes. So I had to kind of like sit down and really kind of digest it and kind of go through a whole bunch of things to figure out what's going on here. And I thought I'd share it because sometimes you'll see it in the forums. And I was reading forums and I saw it and I kept saying, I should always do a video about this. And right now, today is the day I'm doing one. So sit back and hopefully you may learn something, may be interesting. I'm also going to show something about the 33% pass rate. I'm going to give a couple examples, and I'm just doing this just for snicks and giggles more than anything, but it's also a theoretical head game I do with myself. When I look at a game like this, I'm like, well, how small can you slice things and still have meaning, right? And that's actually the meaning behind granularity. Let's look at this. I did a poll a while back. This is 6 months ago when I was on Reddit. And it said, if you're using a stat skill check in your OSR, what time do you prefer? I can't cover them all. There's so many possibilities. Kind of screwed up this poll. This was a bad poll. Horrible, right? Because essentially 1d6 is redundant. That's really kind of stupid to me. So it's really like 60. And if you look at it like that, about 60% say there's no skill checks. About another 60 says they use 1d6. And 60%, another 60, use a 2d6 system. And then it's like 3 times that use 1d20 roll under a stat score. I find that fascinating, okay, because I dropped out the other one, 3d6 one, but it's just that would be the preferred ones, just roll under your stat, okay? And I've been playing games quite a bit, and I've done things with children in school where we're playing White Star and different things like that. And I found out that rolling under stats kind of fun, but it's a little confusing somewhat. The 1d6 found to be a little bit better, and certainly if you have a lot of people, it works a lot really nice. But I just keep like thinking about why this kind of works somewhat. But I also wanted to look at the idea of what is really a skill check and how, what is your options? Because it's always an option thing, right? So this is on the Dragon's Foot forum, and one person was talking about if you read, I guess it's kind of small for anybody looking at this. This is a maximum 1 in 6 chance of accomplishing the impossible or failing the simple. Is it granular enough for me? So you keep seeing the word granular a lot. Granular. And so this other guy, of course, his writing attributes really aren't that important. And these people are saying, what do you use, what dice roll for what situation? And I just started looking up the word granular because I thought it's an interesting word. So the quality or condition of being granular is the definition of granularity. And the scale, level, detail present in a set of data or other phenomenon. Okay. So then I went to look up the word granular because that's what that does, right? And then you get this thing resembling consisting of small grains of particles characterized by high level granularity. It's a nice circle. We circle things that people can't really it's described, but it's not described. So I came up with a very, very easy definition if you tend to want to use this, right? Definition is the level at which data cannot be broken down any further. So it's data chunking. It's really what is this. It's either 3 pieces, 5 pieces, whatever it is. I'm going to use a D&D dice, for example. For a D4, you can only have 4 possible results, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So the granularity is at 4, right? Whereas a D20, you can have 20 possible results. That makes sense, right? So, and the question I'm going to beg, especially in this presentation, is what is best? Don't know, but I'm going to give you options and you can start thinking, well, it kind of makes sense. You end up with the same result. And that's always where I'm kind of going, is it's an exploration of the mind. So if you have your set of Dungeons and Dragons dice, okay, if you could have a coin toss, but I have a 2-sided dice because I thought it was cool looking. Then you can have a 3-sided dice, and there's many varieties thereof. You have a D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20, and D100, which is the big ball, which seems like it would roll forever on the table. Or a lot of people use the 2 D10s, right? One's a percentile dice, essentially what it is. But this is a misnomer. This goes from the least, how would you say, granular to the most granular. You think the least would be a 1, 2, right? It doesn't actually look like this. This is linear. It is not linear. It is more like that. Okay, I'll explain you why. Because once you get to the D20, all of a sudden you have a whole lot of intervals in between when you get to the D100. So it's more like step, and also a giant jump. Okay. And let's say something like you're playing Call of Cthulhu or even Mothership, right? You'll have, once you get into the D100 way of doing things, there's so many little intervals in between. Like, how much does it really matter? You might be asking yourself, okay, wow, I got 3 extra percentages. And that we'll talk about that the next presentation. There's a two-parter. I can't put it all in one, right? Anyways, so let's look at this. I'll grab something super, super simple. You have a character. You're going to jump a spike pit. You need to roll low, and I just pick because that's what I do, on a 1d6 to pass, okay? And usually end up with just the idea if you pass or you fail. But let's just use that model, right? You got to roll low to pass, because let's say one's always pass, okay? And I'm going to use the different dice to do this explanation, right? So the pass or fail options are, and something called the in-between, we'll talk about that, is based on the granularity of the dice. Now you see the one example, someone's making it, another one, they're not. Okay, so this kind of stinks, right? Let's talk about this. You have a two-sided dice or a coin. Either way, it doesn't work. You have two choices. You either pass or you fail, and there's nothing in between, right? So that makes that super simple. You're playing at the table, flip a coin. Okay, you made it, right? So 50-50, that's all you got, right? If you have a D3 situation, okay, now you have a situation where you have the in-between, okay? You have that one number, right? That doesn't actually mean you pass or you fail. So that requires another action, another roll, or you have to make a change of something. So I like to say it's a 33% pass rate. And then you have like this something called the in-between, which we don't know what's happening. Something has to go further with that. It's like Schrodinger's cat. You're both alive and dead at the same time, right? You both passed and failed. D4 is strange because now you have a mixed bag you can do for starting to make your sense of things, right? You can pass, then you can hang on the edge, which requires further action, or you can have like a little bit of a dilemma. You got your foot caught, which is still like the in between in a sense, right? And then you fail. So you can have like something. The in between is the space between passing and failing, and it's sort of strange that a lot of games have that, and they're really not. I mean, that's where the DM kind of makes things up. Well, you almost made it. And then you kind of have stuff going on. This is only one possibility. Another one is that it hangs more in the player's favor, right? That would be this one. You pass very easily and you get to the other side and you're standing a hole in your sword, right? Or you pass, but now you're teetering at the edge. So you both pass, but one's much better off, right? Or you're hanging on the edge. That's the in between. And the last ones you failed, right? But in this count, you actually made it a 50-50. You truly made it different than a D4. Yeah. So let's be honest. You've changed this thing a little bit. Okay. So now we have a D6, which is my preferred. I admit I have some bias here, but you end up with essentially a 1D3, right? Easily passed or passed but teetering on the edge. Both of them are italicized because that's your pass rate, right? But you have two other things. You're hanging on the edge. You got your foot caught on one spike, only did a little bit of damage. And then the other ones, you have levels of degree of failure, I guess you might say, like 5 and 6. Okay. So when you look at it, you have pass, the in between, and you have fail. And it depends on how much you want to break that down. But essentially, that's what's occurring. So it's really strange when you think about it when you're playing a game, what your choices are: pass or fail, pass or in between and fail, right? Now, let's look at this thing. This is our granularity in this experiment, right? We see what's going on, right? And you're going to sit there and think of the other possibilities that can occur. Suppose you get an advantage on something. You get to subtract one from your roll. You get closer to passing. How would that affect the game? Or how would it affect each one of these instances? All right. So let's say I get a -1 to my roll. I roll a 2. It's still a 1 because I subtract 1 from it. You pass. I went from a 50% chance of passing to a 100% chance of passing because I subtracted 1 from it. This may be just silly for a lot of people out there. That's fine. I just find this stuff interesting because it's all based on probability, right? Next one would be a 1d3. You've gone from a 33% chance of passing, and now you're at 66%. So obviously, the in-between goes away. You still have to have a failure, right? It seems to me. But this is, of course, just my interpretation. You can have your own. Put it in the comments. I would love to hear what you think about this, right? We look at the next one, a D4. We've gone from a 25% chance of passing to a 50%. Now these are both passes, and that's the in-between. We put the in-between back in there, and then it's failed. Now that's just one choice. The other choice I had was this one, where we have passed, and now we have going from 50 to 75. We have two unpassed, and we had the in between got sliced out, and then you got failed. Now, like I said, this is just my interpretation, and I would love to hear other people's thoughts on these things. And a D6, right? We've gone from an interval of 33% to 50%. So we have easily passed, standing up, passed, right? Passed but teetering on the edge, right? So now we've stuck him in there, right? And then the rest of this kind of stays the same, hanging on the edge, spike caught on the foot, or caught on the spike, I'm sorry, and fail, right? So looking at this, it sort of seems interesting. It seems we get to the point, I'm going to use the word granularity. You get to the point where this is granular enough that you see a change, but it's not an overwhelming change. A 25% difference, this is now just a 17% difference when you have a D6. Now, that's something you might want to think about when you're doing something, a +1 or +2 on a dice. That's a big change, right? And you can go, obviously, in their rolls, obviously 17, 33, and then you're up to 50, and besides that's 87. But you get the idea what's going on, 66, 87. Now, let's look at these guys in between. And that's where it gets interesting, okay? To keep it consistent, and that's the important thing, you have to still kind of break it up into intervals. And that's kind of what I did. And this was really heady stuff I'm messing with this morning for some reason. But anyways, so just reviewing this, right? 50% pass. This is the in-between, which is 2, it's 33%. 2 and 3, the in-between is now 50%, right? And we're still at the fact that this is a 33% pass. Now I'm going to slide back up. 50% pass, 33% pass, 25% pass. And now we're at a 50% pass. Okay, so now this is where it gets really weird, right? So your in-between is going to expand and contract. Now, if we have a D6, it's 3/4, 33%, okay? And 33% pass. So we have, it goes back to like a D3, which you get to D6 when you start thinking of this, right? You can move it up a little back and forth, but you're still sitting on the same stuff. Look at this when we go to D8, okay? So somebody's got to give, right? In this case, we have easily passed, but teetering. So we have a 3 out of 8. That ends up being 38%. Then you have horrible failed, death, failed, and leg caught on the spectrum kids rather fail. That's 3 out of 8. That's 38% pass and 38% fail. So the only two things in the middle is 4 and 5. 4 and 5 would be the in-between. It's only a quarter. So it's 22 out of 8. Okay. But you still have to have, well, you can do many things, but in this case, I still have the 3 different chunked intervals, right? Pass and fail and have the in-between. Anyways, you have a D10 doing the same thing. Now it gets a little weird. You can make your in-between bigger, or you can make your in-between smaller. I made it smaller in this case. So I said you pass with a 1, 2, or 3, right? And then you actually, 4 is pass but teetering on the edge. So you have a 40% chance of passing. And you have a 40% pass of failing. So that means there's only room for 20% in the middle where you're kind of like in the in-between. And I know this is just kind of strange, but you can either expand the in-between and make it even bigger, right? You can move it from 20 to 40. That means you got to clip the other two choices, which makes them only 30%. So you have the in-between being the bigger chance, right? The next one's the D12. And that's kind of a mess, but it actually ends up being just a D6. And it actually ends up just being a D3. Okay, look at the way it ends up. So you have easily passed, pass with a redundancy. That's because of redundancy. You just pass. I don't know. I can't describe it any different than the fact you're passing, right? And pass teetering on the edge. So that's with a little bit of a dilemma. But essentially, it's 4 out of 12. It's 33% chance of passing. And then you have 33% chance of essentially failing. And then the guys in between would be 33%. So, I mean, this is a weird way of looking at it, but essentially that's all that's really going on, right? And the one that's the most, obviously, is going to be the 5%, right? The D20. That's when you get the big mess here. And the reason why is it goes right back to a D10 scenario, right? And you have more numbers in between, but like I said, it's just a matter of, how you're chunking the data and how do you want to write out your possible outcomes. Now, in a game situation, you could probably think 3 things off the top of your head in the middle of discussion. Either you pass or you fail. What would happen in between? Would you come up with all these other little things in between when you're trying to captivate an audience of 6 or 8 people and having this big discussion? You only have really 3 outcomes. and in between. You come up with your in between off the side. You're not going to have a multiple in betweens. I seriously doubt that's going to happen. So this gives you some food for thought. Okay, let me look at this. So we're really talking about a third. I mean, there's a little wiggle room in there, but you really are talking about thirds on whether something's going to occur, not occur, or um, basically sit in between. So that's for the game master. You have three choices, or it's just pass fail. And I think that's some people just kind of goes with pass fail, but then you have to be descriptive about the fail. It's just 50. And that's one thing. Suppose someone rolls dice, and we'll get more into this in the next one. You have to roll a 15 to pass, but you roll a 14. Do you barely make it? Barely fail? I mean, how do you adjudicate with not getting? I mean, you could be just cut and dry, very robotic, but you can add a little more to it, right? And so, does the dice granularity, let's say the D20, is it produce an overchoice? Or you have to come up with more scenarios based on the dice, or is it just a redundancy in the outcome? Does it really change anything past the 33%, right? And I'm going to explain the other one. I don't know when, not right now, but how it affects skill checks. And the whole thing about it is like, 'cause sometimes I sit around and think about this. I don't know if anybody else thinks about this stuff. I just put it out there, and I love it if you comment. If you say, "Oh my God, I really thought about that myself," or "I've never thought of it this way," write a comment and I'll respond to it. And if you like this, click the like thing and subscribe, whatever you want to do, so I can make more weird stuff like this, and we can have these conversations through the airwaves. All right. With that, you can game on. Have a good day. All right. Bye now.